This is a Dubai Eye 103.8 podcast. You're listening to the UAE's #1 talk radio station.
This is Afternoons on Dubai Eye 103.8.
This is the Afternoons with Helen Farmer podcast, your chance to hear the latest community news, expert advice, real-life stories and more. On today's episode, we're busting a few menopause myths with Dr. Rupinder from HealthBay Polyclinic. This means, when are we going to go through it? What can we expect? What can treatment and management look like and more? Talking jobs, the founder of a new app is what exactly are young job seekers looking for today, and how can you matchmake them with the jobs? Harry Gunning on hand talking about the latest property market. Boom, bust, what's going on? It doesn't sound like it's good news for renters. And Sophie Jones was on hand giving us some top tips for creating a sleep routine for little ones. By popular demand, we are talking menopause this afternoon. There seems to be a bit of a gap when it comes to experts' knowledge, awareness around this topic. So we're bringing one of the best in the business. Joining us from HealthBay Clinic, we've got Dr. Rupinder, who's a specialist obstetrician and gynecologist. And Dr. Rupinder, prepare to feel very busy for the next hour, because I've got a lot of questions for you. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well. Now, I hope you're not offended by that kind of gap in experts, but I feel like so people who do have knowledge around menopause in the UAE are so busy right now because it seems to be so specialist, which blows my mind given that this is something that every single woman listening today is going to go through. Why do you think there is such an absence of knowledge and awareness around this change that everybody goes through?
So I would say that there is a lot of changes that are taking place in women's body in the past few years. It's also post-COVID. We have seen some irregular pattern, which was not the usual earlier. Apart from that, also with the current lifestyle changes and the increasing stress, we are coming across something that we call early menopause and premature menopause, which is on the rise. And also because the general age at which a woman attains menopause is also actually changing. In the former years, we used to say, in the former years, we...
Go on. No, before we start talking about what's changed, I would love it just if we wouldn't mind doing some basic definitions for anyone who's listening today going, I know I've heard of the term menopause, but I don't really know what it is. Would you mind explaining what happens in the body, Dr. Rupinder, when we talk about this phrase menopause?
That's right. Okay. So menopause generally refers to a term which implies that a lady stops menstruation. And we ascertain that the lady has attained menopause if she's actually stopped her menstruation for about a year. So if there is no periods for one whole year, we say, okay, she's got menopause. We also ascertain certain hormonal levels beyond which we say, okay, now this is menopause. However, having said that, some women can have a reactivation occasionally of the ovaries. Mm-hmm. So you could encounter 1 or 2 cycles maybe in the following 2 years after she's had menopause. This is menopause, which means she can no longer have children beyond this point.
So it's the end of that, and I hate the word journey, but that fertility journey. But let's talk about perimenopause, because this is where, oh my goodness, you Google perimenopause and the list of symptoms is absolutely overwhelming. It still seems to be something that we're working through when it comes to testing and understanding the physical side, the psychological side. But can we talk ages? Is there an average age that someone will go through menopause? So, as you're saying, kind of medically defined as hasn't had a period for a year. What age range are we looking at for that stage, Dr. Rupinder?
So it depends on the race. That's number one. But generally, we would say menopause occurs in 50s, usually in the early 50s. So we would say 50 to 52. Mm-hmm. Now, in the Southeast Asian countries, this age has already reduced. It happens around 48 to 50 years of age. And we've seen this in the past 20 years already. And And then with perimenopause, how many years before that kind of the finality, I guess, can people start experiencing some of the symptoms that we're going to be exploring? When can that start? So that could usually start within, say, 3 years to 5 years before they actually get into menopause. With some ladies, it's even longer.
Crikey. Okay. So you were just saying earlier that we're seeing more premature menopause. We're seeing that age come down. Why would that be, Doctor? What are some of the factors that might contribute to that?
So premature menopause is something we do not always have answers to. In about 50% of cases, we're not able to determine why, but I would say that if anybody's got autoimmune disorders, for example, if you've got autoimmune thyroiditis or any other autoimmune-related condition where the body's producing antibodies against itself, and also maybe the ovaries or any other endocrine gland, that could be one of the main reasons. Or if somebody's undergone too many IVF cycles, wherein we extract a lot of eggs, and so that can push her also either into early menopause or premature menopause. And of course, if somebody's getting into vigorous exercises, I always tell women that they should not go overboard, with any exercise. As in high intensity, 6 to 7 days a week is actually really not good for women because it actually shuts down the ovaries. So that and or smoking, smoking for longer periods of time, all of this is quite toxic for the ovaries and the eggs.
You're my kind of doctor, not too much exercise. Brilliant. Dr. Rupinder joining us from HealthBay Clinic today, specialist obstetrician and gynecologist. And I wanted to ask you about that, some of the myths and misconceptions that you've heard over the years about the menopause. What comes to mind when I say that?
The myths are that everybody undergoes hot flashes, night sweats. That's not true. There is I would say about 50% of women don't actually experience these symptoms, whereas 50% do. And also not everyone has all the symptoms, so one does not really have to get scared. The other thing is that menopause only happens after 50s. Actually, it doesn't. It's happening even earlier right now.
That's interesting because that tends to be, it's that kind of that lazy stereotype of, a woman of a certain age looking a bit flustered in a meeting. But I mean, to be honest with you, I think a lot of people actually underestimate a lot of the psychological sides of going through menopause. And it's a really cruel irony, to be honest, that this is something that women in their 40s and 50s go through when they are perhaps at the peak of their career and workplaces aren't being accommodating to some of their changing needs. And, really staggering numbers, certainly out of the UK, about the number of women who are, lost to the job market because they feel pushed out.
Yes.
Can I ask you, when people come to you, Dr. Rupinder, what kind of sense of desperation are you getting from people who are really in need of support and solutions?
So I start picking up cases earlier of perimenopause now because a lot of them do come and express their emotional need and that they're quite not feeling all right. Some of them could just come in with very vague symptoms such as, not feeling quite there, having a brain fog, getting very irritable. And these can happen as early as even in late 30s. I would say about 38, 39, early 40s.
That's me. The brain fog is real, though. It seriously is.
Yes.
I live in fear of repeating conversations back to people who have told me that information in the first place. So if you meet me and I just look a bit vague, it's not personal, I promise. So that's interesting. But I think even talking about it today, and understanding that this could be something that can be addressed is actually really powerful.
Yes, it can be, certainly. And we also have a lot of women now that come with sleep-related problems. Okay, for example, having a lot of interrupted sleep, not feeling quite all right, even if they're sleeping very long hours and they're not feeling okay, the quality of sleep. It could be something just as simple as, thinning of hair and losing a lot of hair. That can be an issue. You do the thyroid test and you do the iron and everything is all right. But they are actually the perimenopausal age group, and that could be the reason that they're actually having loss of hair, diffuse loss of hair, and thinning of hair, apart from the mood changes.
Dr. Rupinder,
of course...
sorry, go on.
Yes.
No, go on.
Irregular cycles. Irregular cycles, having spotting, the periods are not okay, and feeling bloated all the time. These are other signs that do take place as well.
Well, let's talk about how you diagnose as such, because I went in for a kind of just a general chat about a year ago and talking about some things I was going through. It was actually very hard to pin down through a blood test alone when it comes to hormonal screenings, because these levels fluctuate all the time.
That's right.
So are you able to give a definitive answer that, yes, you are going through perimenopause when some of these blood tests perhaps aren't as accurate as we'd like?
So it's really a collective. You cannot actually pinpoint and say this is it, but we would look at the symptoms. We look for the signs, then we do the blood test, and it's always everything holistically when we look at what's going on. And then, of course, the blood tests do help us, because if somebody's got a relative decline in the estrogen, and there's something called estrogen dominance. This doesn't mean that the estrogen levels are rising, but it is a relative decline in the progesterone with respect to the estrogen decline. So when the ratio reduces, we look at all of this, and then we correlate it with the symptoms. Then I would say, yes, okay, this lady could be going into this. There are other hormones that we do, such as the anti-Mullerian hormone, which can also kind of indicate if somebody is now closer to attaining menopause. But like I said, all of these can change subject to changes in the diet, changes in the lifestyle, and the most important I always stress on is hydration.
Interesting. Okay. Dr. Rupinder, let's go to the text line. Saying, hi, Helen, really keen on today's topic. I've been experiencing signs and wonder how long it normally lasts. Hot flashes, night sweats, and even pimples that never stop, one after the other. And I know what you're going to say. You're going to say it depends.
Yeah. So again, it's we don't have a fixed rule. Majority of the patients, majority of the women, I should say, they undergo the hot flashes and night sweats within the first 1 or 2 years. Okay, and this can start even before menopause. But once we've established menopause, that okay, she stopped having her periods already, it can extend into 1 to 2 years beyond the menopause. That's the usual. Mm-hmm. However, in rare circumstances, we also do see, and I do have patients where they go into the 4th, 5th year, and they do definitely need hormonal support.
We're going to talk treatment after 12:30. I want to keep going through as many messages as we can. I wanted to get this. This is from Chloe saying, really good timing, guys. Thank you. I came off the pill at the end of August and haven't had a period since. Turned 48 in October. I've had 2 months of hot flush-like symptoms for about a minute at a time, but they've stopped now. Other than increase in anxiety, which is actually getting quite bad, I don't appear to have any symptoms at all. How do I know if I'm going through the menopause? Anxiety is something that I hear time and time again. Is that something you've heard from patients or anecdotally as well? Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I myself undergo anxiety because I know I'm into perimenopause. So coming to Chloe's question, I would like to ideally know how many years she's been on the pill, because now her case sounds to me not really menopause. If she's still in her 30s or even 40s, she might have actually gone into something called post-pill amenorrhea. Okay, and she could have gone. So what's happening with her symptoms now is all these years she was getting an external supply of estrogen and progesterone, and her own ovaries, they've become quiescent, so they're not producing the endogenous estrogen and progesterone. And suddenly now when she's got off the pill, her body lacks the estrogen, lacks the progesterone, and hence she's coming up with the lack of estrogen anxiety, hot flashes, and she might feel that she's feeling like not herself at all. So she needs to definitely see somebody. And first, we have to get into the details of her history, how long she's been on the pill, what's her current age, do some blood tests, and we can reactivate ovaries. I do that for my patients because I get a lot of these patients.
So you say you can reactivate ovaries?
Yeah, we do. So when the ovaries get into a quiescent stage because of, prolonged use of pills, and I'm really surprised because I come across many young women, they've been on the pill for 16, 17, 18 years nonstop. And this actually is not good practice. If somebody is taking pills for whatever reason, you should take it for 2 to 3 years, and you should take a break for 2 to 3 months after 2 to 3 years, and then restart it. You need your own ovaries to get activated again, and then thereafter it's always good to take a break. But if somebody's not taken a break for a long time, their own ovaries get into a quiescent state, which means when they finally stop, as in Chloe's case, we need to reactivate it. Okay. So we run some tests. It could take anywhere from 3 months to 9 months to reactivate it, but then we can accelerate that process by giving certain things.
Discussing the menopause today, something all women listening today will go through to a varying degree of symptoms, some physical, some psychological, and many of you reaching out for a bit of expert advice. Dr. Rupinder is with us today. She's a specialist obstetrician and gynecologist at HealthBay Clinic. And I hope you've had a coffee during the news, Rupinder, because we've got a lot of questions to get through. I love this from Charlotte. Thank you. And I'm sure you hear it all. I think this is one of the big kind of misconceptions about doctors is You're not embarrassed by anything. You've heard it all. And this is a great opportunity. You don't need to make an appointment. You can just pick up your phone. Charlotte, such a great question. Thank you for raising this. She's saying, can I ask about supporting our nanny? She's 52, reluctant to go on HRT, but is really suffering with hot flashes. What else can she do or take to manage the symptoms? Thank you, Charlotte. Brilliant question. What comes to mind here, Dr. Rupinder?
So again, I would get into the history. Now, what also happens, as I mentioned earlier, is a lot of women don't actually adequately hydrate, or, they are they do not like to have the AC on. So hot flashes is something we can control also through hydration. And typically what happens to our bodies as we get older is we don't realize we're in a state of dehydration. So that's the first thing I would like to look at for her. And the second thing is, of course, I want to assess what is the severity of the hot flashes. We do have herbal medication, which can help. However, it could only help maybe in 50 to 60% of cases, not in all. And what increasingly I do with my patients, and a lot of patients to take, is not the typical synthetic HRT, but we do have alternatives such as bioidentical forms of HRT, which works pretty well, and we really go in very, very low doses. So therefore, this is not really something that they need to worry about, and it's very closely supervised and monitored. And apart from this, we don't go with this typical, even if she wants to go talk about estrogen, we don't give synthetic estrogen preparations. We have something called selective estrogen receptor modulators that we can get. So we have alternatives, to hormones per se. That she can,
you mentioned supplements, and I'm just anticipating messages coming in, Dr. Rupinder. What are some of the supplements that you recommend to help with hot flushes in particular?
So, ladies take evening primrose oil. They can take St. John's wort. But if they're doing any of these supplements, which are herbal, they need to talk to their doctor about it. Because if they're combining it with other allopathic medications, sometimes there could be some, adverse effects. So again, whatever supplements they do take, it's always better to discuss it with the doctor. This is something, and then now increasingly we have something called DIN, which is an extract of all the green leafy cruciferous vegetables. Again, please do not take this without consulting your doctor. Then we have other, supplements such as maca root, which works well for some women. They have maca root powder, which works well. So we have quite a few of these in the market.
Thank you for that. A message from a husband saying, my wife is going through premature menopause in her early 40s. Is there anything we can do to slow it down? Interesting question. I don't know, Dr. Rupinder. I don't know what I don't know how this has been diagnosed. This is all the information we have, but I guess slowing down menopause. Yes.
So over here, there's a list of supplements that we can try. We cannot make any promises. Again, the first thing is to investigate why she may be going into a premature menopause. The second thing, to try and slow it down, we can start with supplements, lifestyle changes, and now we are getting into something called stem cell therapy, which is something that we do. Again, it depends case-to-case basis, and this is something I would really like for them to come and discuss in person. But yes, we do have options. We don't have promises, but we have options. And some of the options can be promising also. Depends on the case.
I love this question from Chital, who's been in touch, saying, I heard that most women will go through menopause around the same time as their own mother did. Is this true? I find this interesting because I asked my mum at Christmas, I was like, just out of curiosity, Babs, when did this happen? Even though I'm much more similar to my paternal grandmother in terms of just, body type and whatnot. How useful is that? Is that something you as a doctor would ask?
Yes, I do ask, but I would ask this if somebody's coming into me at an earlier age of menopause. So yes, there is sometimes a link between when the mother attained menopause and when a patient will attain menopause at the same time. However, with the current lifestyle changes and other pressures, and with COVID and post-COVID changes we've seen in the menstrual cycle, it's not always true. Okay. Because, for example, if somebody's smoking or, like I said, aggressively exercising or other stressors in life, she could attain that even earlier. Or if she's diabetic, typically in women with diabetes, we see that they attain menopause at a later age.
Wow, didn't know that. Interesting for this region in particular. So a bit of nature and nurture there, some environmental factors that can play a role too. Coming back to I guess, lifestyle factors. Karen's saying, can you recommend any foods we should be eating and avoiding at this stage in life? You mentioned hydration being key. What about foods?
So in food, if somebody's got a lot of hot flashes, I would like to say you want to have more of green leafy vegetables, cruciferous vegetables. You want to have nuts. You want to avoid a lot of red meat and a lot of seafood if you are a big fan of that, because that produces a lot more body heat internally. You want to do things like cooling your body down, and hence we stress on hydration. So the whole thing about hot flashes is it's thermogenic, which means you want to do everything to cool the body down. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to avoiding food, I would say avoid those kind of food. Maybe once or twice a week you could go in for the seafood and the red meat. But generally speaking, lots more green vegetables and fruits and hydration.
We've had a message, thank you for that, on the pill. I think that raised a really interesting point there. No name saying, I'm 45 and was on the combined pill until September when my doctor suggested me to stop. Was on it for 12 years. Since then, I haven't had a period. Is it possible that my periods actually stopped a while ago? Or could it just be that my period's taking a while to return after stopping? And it's actually nothing to do with the menopause. It is a confusing one because this listener may well have naturally stopped her periods during that time. So she's 45. And I know you can't say definitively from one message on the radio, but it does raise an interesting point that a lot of people might have perhaps gone through it and not even realised.
My sense would say most likely she could have her period if she waits a little longer. She should not get surprised if she does get her period, but I would want to do a scan. I would want to look at the size of the ovaries. I want to look at the endometrium, which is the inner lining of the uterus. That is, I want to see how thick it is. Is it building up? Is it growing again? Therefore, does she stand a chance to have a period? Not because 45 is what we will say, okay, she could have gone into perimenopause, which means she still can have her period. It's not that she can't.
I wanted to ask you lastly about some of the treatment options here in the UAE, and you mentioned bioidentical treatment as well. Mm-hmm. And we saw big shortages across Europe of HRT and in its various forms. And I wondered about ease and access and just how practical is it to get the medication that someone might need? Because a lot of people get increasingly desperate to have these hormones balanced out and addressed.
Right. That's a very good question. So one is we do not have easy access to hormones, whether they are synthetic or whether that is the conventional hormones, the HRT, or even if it's bioidentical, that's more easily available. However, you do have to have a prescription. So it's not something you can get off the counter. Supplements you can get off the counter, but if you're talking about hormones, whether it's synthetic, as in the typical conventional ones, or if you're talking about the bioidentical ones, it is something you need a prescription for. Now, the conventional hormones, you can only get it through hospital pharmacies. Okay, if you're talking about bioidentical, then, at the clinics as well, the gynecologists that are practicing anti-aging and this sort of, dealing with the bioidentical hormones, then we can all prescribe it easy. However, again, it has to be supervised. So Dubai Health Authority is quite strict, and rightfully so, because any hormonal intake should be closely supervised and monitored.
And can I ask then about insurance? Is it covered by insurance?
Unfortunately, no, it's not covered by insurance. Even the conventional, it's very difficult. However, if somebody does have perimenopause, and if they come in with other symptoms, then we have ways of getting at least part of it covered.
This is good information. Dr. Rupinder.
Yes, and since I'm on the radio, I cannot speak beyond that.
That's fine. I appreciate your candor. But for anyone that does want to come and see you, explore some of the symptoms, talk to you about some screenings and, of course, treatments, you can be found at HealthBay Clinic. Which branch are you based at?
So I'm at the old Verve Villas, not at the new Women's Center. I sit at the Verve Villas because this is where we do I deal a lot with perimenopause and menopausal women, and we have the radiology here. So if we need to do the breast screening prior to starting something, we do that as well. So since we have the whole, gamut over here, if somebody needs to do a cardiology checkup, which is what I recommend for anybody getting into perimenopause or menopause, it's not just about, having your hormones checked. You need to have the breast checkup. You need to have a bone health checkup. You need to have a cardiology checkup. So there's a whole thing we do before we actually say, okay, you qualify now for this kind of treatment or not.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. Really, really do appreciate it. Dr. Rupinder speaking to us there on the topic of the menopause. All the very best to you and the team. If you want Dr. Rupinder's details, you can just send me the word woman and I will send you that link.
This content is for informational purposes only and does not intend to substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis or treatment.
Talking job market, job opportunities, changing the speed of light here in the UAE. So trying to keep up with the new careers is one thing, technology changing all the time, but also the way that business is done. Recruiters need to adapt too. Joining us now is Joseph Udu. He is the CEO of a newly launched job app. It's called Just Pro, which aims to help job seekers find part-time work and full-time careers across the UAE. Joseph, thank you for joining us today. How are you, sir?
I'm all right, Helen. How about you? How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very interested in this because, well, honestly, every time we talk jobs on the show, I get so many messages saying, this is my challenge, this is what I'm struggling with. And actually on this very topic, we've had a message talking about, just today, someone's got a knockback, become, you were the closest, you were the next candidate, you were we're our second choice. But Joseph, kind of reflecting, I guess, on the last decade, what have you noticed as being the biggest changes in the employment industry?
Basically, post-COVID, a lot has changed, actually. So nowadays we have, if I'm looking from the employer's perspective, I'm an employer, and then I know how hard it is to actually find the right skill for job roles. Sometimes when I post jobs, you have a lot of people applying, and there's more desperation in the market than there is actually for people with the right skills to actually get jobs. So like in the last 10 years, post-COVID especially, you see companies actually not wanting to have like full-time employees. People would rather outsource jobs, get freelancers, and then, we're saving as an employer, you're saving. And at the same time, the job seekers need to actually, there has to be like this improvement. People have to actually build on themselves, improve their skills, learn new things. Technology is changing a lot of things nowadays. You have AI, IoT. I could just write a software and it's literally going to leave 3 of my workers, unemployed. So there's a whole lot happening currently right now that, it's really like a very tense market right now. So I'm going to speak from the perspective of an employer looking for the right talent. So it's hard, actually. Sometimes I post a job and then you look at it, you got I post a job for a beautician, then I have 5,000 applications. 99% of them are not actually beauticians. People are desperate, so when they see, they just go to the sites, just click.
So people are taking that kind of scattergun approach of saying, if I think about the volume of applications something's going to stick to the wall. But
exactly.
But from your point of view, you're having to sort through a lot of irrelevant resumes and applications to try and find the real talent. You've said that word desperation twice now, Joseph, and I think that's very real. It's very real for a lot of people, especially when you're in a part of the world where your job often secures your ability to stay in a country, through that visa. So it's interesting that you're saying that a lot of people are reducing their own costs for visas and PROs and having part-time workers, more of that gig economy outsourcing. Does that mean people are having their own visas, their own freelance visas, so they've got the ability to actually get involved in that gig economy?
Exactly. So this is the thing about Dubai. Now, Dubai is not like a cheap place to stay. It's not easy. It's not cheap to be here. So in that desperation, I think that a whole lot of people, Dubai is great. The idea they came up having this freelancers visa is a great concept. So, and in the end, the jobs you have now, if you want a job, you just create your own job in many cases. I know it's not really easy, but then this concept of actually being in that gig economy is what we thought about when we created Just Pro, because in the end, people have to actually go out there, find opportunities, and people looking for them should be able to find them. Do you understand?
Yeah, I do. I want to ask you about what job seekers are looking for, apart from the obvious, which is paid employment. But, we see a lot about, studies around millennials talking about, this is what they want from a workplace. And I wondered what you'd seen in the region, if this is just a bit of, lazy journalism around, millennials are work shy.
Yeah, I met a 20-year-old, I think about 2 days ago, and he writes Python, he writes Node.js from scratch, and we sat down for about 30 minutes, and he just realized that basically he doesn't even know what's really happening. So I introduced him to the work environment, the structure we use, our technology and everything, and he goes like, you know what? can I just intern here for free? Like, I want to learn what's going on here.
Wow.
I mean, millennials, yeah, it's a thriving generation. I've been coding since 2001. So, and then there's a lot of things has evolved. So the young people really need to figure out where they want to be. Like, it's not just about getting a job. It's like, am I going to grow from here?
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to help me? Am I going to like be a different person 2 years working here?
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the salary. It's about basically like, what am I going to get out of working here?
Yeah, I mean, that is something that people seem to be coming back to regardless of ages. You know, am I doing a job or am I working for a company that is aligned with my values and who I want to be in the world and, you know, is kind of tied to my identity and that sense of fulfillment. And it's I think in some ways it's great because it means that companies need to really have a hard look at their company culture. And we've talked about burnout an awful lot on the show in the last couple of weeks and across other shows here on Dubai Eye 103.8. So I think this is, you know, hopefully a bit of a turning point for some, certainly not all. But I wanted to come back to that application process, really, because I'm sure like a lot of, I mean, I'm an elder millennial, 1982. So I have my resume, you know, in fact, I don't even know where it is, but it's somewhere. But it's, you know, it's a document that, you know, I have it in Times New Roman, you know, I update it when necessary. But I wondered how people can really up their game when it comes to applying. What are employers looking for, whether that is stylistically, application, you know, that process, the approach? Joseph, can you give any insights there? And I guess how your app is looking to address some of the pain points?
I'm just going to go straight to the point. So I literally started JobsPro about a month ago. It took me just 3 days to get to fully staff my organization. I have about 20 employees right now.
Whoa.
So what happens is that when I went out to commercial job sites, you know, there are like millions of people actually out there just clicking on everything. So what we did with JobsPro is we made it like, you know, the way you go on most of these shopping apps and then you want to buy grocery, you click, and then you buy. That's what we created with JobsPro. It's shopping for job seekers. For employers, it's like, I want a salesperson. I get on JobsPro. I see all of the salespeople. And we have a very unique algorithm that actually narrows down, brings people to a particular skill set. So you can't have people applying for your sales job if they don't have sales background. Okay. So it's like we take a CV, we take a resume, and on JobsPro, you just put up your resume. You don't have to do anything. Just put up your resume, go to sleep. And then it just keeps walking. We keep recommending jobs and keep linking you up to employers. So for instance, like you said, you have your resume and stuff, and if you have it on JobsPro, probably, and you have this great job, you have a great job.
I'm not looking just before the Dubai mill gets going. I'm happy in this seat. Thanks very much, Joseph. But let's use a different industry as an example. Let's use graphic designer, for example, who can be, you know, employed in-house, but can also be that working as a freelancer. So let's say someone's a graphic designer listening today. What would the process be of getting on the platform, and how could people find them and ultimately pay them?
Oh, beautiful. That's a very good question. And using a graphic designer is the best time because usually it's very hard to find graphic designers. So you're a graphic designer, you get on any of these app store, Apple or Google, you download JobsPro Jobs, set up a profile as a freelancer, you see the options, and just put up every single thing you do, corporate graphics, print, media, web, everything. And then instantly, once your profile is approved, because we literally approve every profile, we don't just throw profiles or make calls to everyone, because we don't want people hiring, you know, wrongly on the app. So, and then you set up your profile, and then that's it. So if you place the charge, for example, like you want to charge 20 dirham for X graphic, for example, people literally come on that place, pick up that service, book you up, and then we'll create that connection between you and the employer. So what happens is we release your WhatsApp number, we release your phone call number, and then you can create an appointment. They can create an appointment. You can come over, or they can come over to yours, and then you have a meeting. You talk about what exactly they want, and then you can build them on your own. We don't charge anything for that. We don't charge freelancers to be on the platform. You know, we don't charge any commission from transactions. We just create the connection between freelancers and people looking for them. Helen, I'm going to ask you this question, for example.
Oh, crikey. I like being the one asking the questions, Joseph. I'll do my best. Go on.
Okay, let's say you're looking for, like, I mean, you have, like, I mean, we know we have some other apps out there in the market, but then I'm talking about individuals. Like, if I have a plumber on my app, the plumber will be charging you, and the plumber will be earning the income for themselves. They're not paying to one corporate structure that gives them a minimal salary at the end of the month. The plumber is earning directly. We don't take any commissions. We don't take anything. We just create that connection. And then we're at the back end making sure everything is right. Is this customer satisfied? Did this plumber deliver to specification? That's what we're there for. We're like the middleman who makes things happen.
How do you ensure that everyone is legal and covered and able to work here in the UAE and fulfill some of the jobs that you're looking to kind of matchmake them with?
And that's exactly the very good question. So, we do, like I said earlier, I'm really glad with Dubai. Dubai is really very smart. So with this freelancer visa, when you get on the app and you're a freelancer, you should have a freelancer license or permit. So, and there's a section on that app where you have to verify your profile. So we have this process where everyone on the app is actually legal and qualified to do that job. I mentioned earlier that we don't just approve profiles. We actually go through this process of tediously looking at everything, getting documents, getting passports, getting everything just to make sure the connection we create is actually a viable connection.
So I mentioned graphic design there. What other kind of industries have you got represented now, whether it is jobs or indeed job seekers? Joseph, what kind of areas are you looking to address?
So we have about 450 job titles. You're a radio presenter. Great job, like I mentioned earlier. I'm a software programmer and also an entrepreneur. So I can do sales. I can do software development. So on my app, on Just Pro, what happens is when you come in there, we take a look at your resume when you post it in there, and then we see all of your strengths. This is a special, unique algorithm that we created. We look at all your strengths, your past job experiences, everything you've done in the past. We take a look at all of that, and then we'll recommend you directly. So there are about 450 job titles and about 18 different freelancing categories. Including professional models. Like if you're a model, you're pretty and you want to be a model, you can actually just get on Jasper, and then people are looking for models every day.
Joseph, we run out of time. Thank you so much. For anyone that does want to check out the app, find out more, whether it is that they're looking for people or they're looking for work, what's the best way of checking it out?
Or if you're on iOS, which is Apple or Google Play, you just get on the search and look for Just Pro Jobs. If you're looking for a job, it's Just Pro Jobs. Literally just professional. So we have like the abbreviation, Just Pro Jobs.
Joseph, thank you so much. It was really, impressive to get it together so quickly and clearly addressing something you believe is a bit of a gap in the market. So if anyone wants those details, you can just send me job. I'll send over the website so you can have a nosy. Joseph speaking to us from Just Pro. We are talking baby and toddler sleep now with Sophie Jones, a qualified childcare professional with decades of experience. I think crucially she's a mum herself, so been there, seen it, done it, and has helped countless families both here and the UK with all sorts of different issues from sleep that we're talking today, but nutrition, behaviour and more. Sophie, how are you this afternoon?
Hi, Helen. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. What's keeping you busy right now? What are some of the common concerns and questions you're getting from the community here in the UAE?
So it's always sleep. Sleep is always a big one. But I think that there are so many topics that kind of all roll into one. So I think if your child's not eating well or is unstimulated or there are other problems in other areas, then sleep's going to be affected. So I think it really is looking at everything holistically.
Quite agree. Let's talk then a little bit about your approach when it comes to, I don't know, do you call it sleep training? Sophie, how do you kind of explain a little bit about your philosophy around it?
Yeah, so really, as I said about kind of looking at things holistically, I think that's the most important thing. And that's what I like to do. I'm not just looking at sleep and tackling sleep, because I think there's always kind of bigger issues there. And if your child is hungry or not getting quite the amount of nutrition that they need, or they're having too much milk or whatever it may be, we need to address that first and then help the sleep. And also it's working together with parents. So I think it's really important to first of all establish a really good relationship with the families, work out their parenting style, what they want to change. You know, some people don't want to change certain things. So it's working out what parents want as well and working together to come up with a solution. Yeah,
I think that's interesting because there can be a few different schools of thought. And if you are going to an expert, it's for good reason. But sometimes if their philosophy doesn't fit yours, or you're only able to work within, as you say, kind of your values and what you feel comfortable with as a family, then it's just simply not going to work. I wanted to ask you a little bit about when you recommend starting a sleep routine for a new baby. We can all read the book during pregnancy, and then the book tends to go out the window when the little one comes home. And routine, I personally found it helpful as long as it wasn't too prescriptive. And for me, it was like finding that balance. But a very difficult thing is knowing when you can start to introduce, feeding schedules, putting them down at the right time. What does the baby's developing brain tend to lend itself to when it comes to introducing that, Sophie?
Yeah, so I think at around 3 to 4 months is when you can start to put a very loose routine in place. So before that, a baby's body clock, their circadian rhythm, hasn't yet kind of gone into sync, and then they haven't developed that and matured that yet. So it's really hard to get any kind of a routine in the first few months. So that's more about relaxing, bonding, feeding, and getting to know each other. But from 3 months plus, you can really start to see a kind of routine developing naturally, but also you can start to have some spacing between feeds. You start to understand your baby's cries more, and that's when you can start to develop a routine. But as I said, a very loose routine. Usually around 6 months is when you can see something really, really, really develop when solids are introduced.
We're talking sleep on the show this afternoon, baby and toddler in particular, with Sophie Jones. She's a qualified childcare professional. She does, of course, help with sleep, but with that holistic approach, looking at the impact of good nutrition on sleep, on behaviour as well. I wanted to ask you, Sophie, about the dreaded leaps. And I wondered when we start to see significant leaps in children when it comes to sleep in particular, and what determines when they happen.
Well, I think the biggest leap is obviously when they develop their own body clock around 3 months. And you'll see a massive change in the way that they sleep at night, and hopefully they'll start to sleep longer periods at night. But at every stage, there are changes to sleep, and every milestone they go through, and every different skills that they learn. You may find you have a few disrupted night's sleep, but it will smoothen out and it will get back to normal as long as you've got a good routine in place.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the text line. A message from Alicia saying, how do you know when to drop a nap? Also, can I count sleeping in the car or buggy as a proper nap, or does it need to be in the cot? Son is 18 months old. Thank you. How can we help Alicia? Tell us then, what are the signs that you need to say bye-bye to one nap? It's a sad time when you say goodbye to both. It really is.
It's a very sad time. I remember it well. So I think that when a child is taking too long to fall asleep for nap time, that is probably the number one. When they're upstairs singing in their cot and they can't fall asleep, it's because they're not tired enough. And then the second clue would be not falling asleep well at bedtime. So if bedtime is taking longer than, say, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, they just can't fall asleep, they're not tired enough, then it's time to think about dropping one of those naps. And I think that at 18 months, your child will probably be only having one nap.
Okay, hope that helps, Alicia. And a message from Ellie saying, great timing, hi both. Just recently moved to Dubai and totally confused by what my children should wear to bed. We've got a 5-month-old and a 3-year-old, and I worry about the AC being too cold. It's on auto to come on at 24 degrees, but what should I be dressing them in and having on the bed? I think this is such a good question, because all the books that I read were very much looking at, data and temperatures from other parts of the world. But as Ali's correctly pointing out, we've got some control over that with air conditioning. And I get cold now, so what does that tend to be a general rule about the number of layers and I guess bedclothes as well?
Yeah, so I was looking at the temperature being 23 degrees, around that. But of course, everyone's AC unit is different and more powerful, and so that can be an issue. But I think you've got to kind of trust your baby or child as well. Are they waking up sweaty? Are their hands or feet cold? Think about that. But also, how do you feel when you sleep? Are you cold? Are you waking up cold? But I would say generally I would put on one layer, a second layer, or a sleeping bag. And I think a sleeping bag can be great because it can really keep them at the right temperature throughout the night, so they're not kicking off blankets.
Hope that helps, Ali. All the best and welcome to Dubai. Sophie, I'd love your insights on why little ones tend to wake up in the night and how we should respond. And this is very much going to depend on the age of the child. She said, who had a 5-year-old tiptoeing into my room at 4:30 this morning. But for let's say the under 2s, what are some of the common reasons that they might be calling out and wanting our attention?
Yeah, so for under 2s, I think, it's a broad subject, and I think you need to work out why they're waking. And I think keeping a diary really helps of how many times they're waking, what time they're waking. Is it consistently kind of 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning? What are they wanting? And then looking at their day routine to make sure, are they getting enough nutrition? Are they having enough protein and carbs to keep them full during the night? Also milk amounts. Are you giving them too much milk? So their bladder is starting to work in the night. Things like that. So I think it's good to rule hunger out. But also it's looking at, is it behavioural? Have you actually got into a bit of a habit of them coming into your bedroom and then you ending up, putting them in your bed? If so, how do you want to tackle that? Do you want them to sleep in your bed or do you want them to sleep in their cot? So it's making a decision on that and then sticking with it.
We made I don't want to say a mistake, but it was an interesting experiment about baby massage and incorporating that into kind of a wind down routine with our little one when she was about 18 months. And then she'd wake up in the night basically demanding a massage. I was like, no.
Yeah, exactly. They'll take anything they can get and they'll run with it.
Like, massage! Yeah. Like, this is the most Dubai baby ever. I would like then, we've only got a couple of minutes, so this is a topic we'd like to expand on in a future day, but about co-sleeping. I really just want to get your take on the safety aspects because it's such a personal decision. I personally didn't feel comfortable doing it when they were little, but now I love a snuggle most of the time. What do we need to know about co-sleeping when it comes to babies and toddlers in particular and making sure that they are safe as a priority?
Yeah, so I think co-sleeping is absolutely fine as long as you are happy with it and you're all sleeping. I think when co-sleeping becomes an issue is when your child's not actually sleeping and then therefore that's affecting everything else, mood, behaviour, appetite, etc. But also you're not sleeping, so you may not be the best parent that you can be the next morning. Totally. So I think that it depends on how it's affecting you. In terms of safety, of course, making sure that no pillows, no heavy duvets, making sure the room is the right temperature, that you don't smoke. There are obviously a bed that's close to the floors in case they may roll. But I think that there are so many amazing options with co-sleepers and side sleeping beds that there's great alternatives to them actually being physically in your bed with you.
Thank you so much for your time, Sophie, today. For anyone that wants to reach out, couldn't get to a question today, for example, or just need talking through an issue that might be a bit too complicated for a text message, what's the best way of reaching out?
Yeah, so on Instagram, Sophie Jones Parenting Support would be the best way.
Superstar, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. If anyone wants to get in touch with Sophie, you can just send me the word sleep and I will send you that link. Sophie Jones, absolute pleasure. Here at Dubai Eye, we do talk about what you're talking about, and property always a hot topic, and certainly some hot prices around at the minute. Joined now in the studio by Harry Tregoning. He is the founder of Tregoning Property and Tregoning Maintenance as well. And thank you for making time in your very busy schedule.
Oh, thank you very much.
Running around like the proverbial...
I made sure I was here early because these roads closing around the place.
I know. Well, I really do appreciate it because there's a lot going on in the world of property, from news, developments. We're going to see what your kind of read on the ground is. I wanted to ask you first, Harry, a little bit about the latest about making rental payments, because I've heard about a number of tenants who are now paying via direct debit instead of cheques. Is this becoming the norm, do you think?
Is it becoming the norm? Probably not.
But it is possible.
They launched a new scheme last week, the Dubai Land Department and Emirates MBD, to create a much better framework. I mean, direct debit has been here since 2014, but it's not been really used.
It hasn't at all, whereas that was the thing for me, certainly in the UK, 15, 16 years ago. It would just go out of your account, and then you come here and you're like, behold...
Yeah,
my checkbook.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the one thing I would say about direct debit is it's not going to change everyone's payments monthly. Mm-hmm. I went to Emirates NBD to get a form last week just so I could have a look at what they were doing. And they've still got annual payments, 6 months, quarterly,
okay,
etc. And so that would also come down to your agreement with your landlord.
Because presumably it's at the discretion of the agent and the landlord. It's not a given yet.
No, it's not a given. And also the landlord needs to be proactive in this. They need to go to the bank, fill in the form first, then go and see their tenant, and then it goes on. I mean, obviously, people who are doing one check, there's no incentive really to do it. You do your transfer, your check, and send it straight across to your landlord, and you're done.
Yeah,
there's no benefit.
Okay. All right, good to know. Let us know if this is something that you are interested in, or indeed it's already happened in your life. Now, one question we get an awful lot when we're talking about property, it's people like you, the agents. Should we be paying renewal fees to agents? Text that came in earlier today, Harry Tregonning. What do you say? Because I've had experience of both, that being the case, it's coming up. I'll pop you over with the contract, you can sign it and you can sign a cheque for me, and then also it just being a bit of a rollover.
Well, there are two lines of thought on this. Mm-hmm. Obviously, from the agent's point of view, it's nice to retain some income, build some retained income moving forwards. But you need to make sure your agent is doing their work for you, negotiating at a proper level. Mm-hmm. We don't actually do this ourselves. We feel that it's easier for a tenant to deal with their landlord, and we get called in if we need to at that point, because it seems ridiculous to make a nominal charge just for the sake of getting in. You might not think I've done a very good job if I've charged you. So that's one school of thought. The school of thought at the other is that you can go onto the RERA website and download the latest unified contract, and you can fill it in yourself using a PDF editor and do your addendum and go along to your landlord, get it signed. Speaking of contracts, a message here from Trent saying, repainting rental villa question. Contract doesn't mention repainting when the lease is up. We've stayed in there 8 to 9 years. Landlord's never paid for any internal repainting during this time. We've always paid for it. I always thought it was an old-fashioned rule that the tenant needs to repaint the villa when they leave. Does Harry know? So the contract doesn't say anything. It's a tricky one, this.
But proper grey area.
It sort of changes backwards and forwards. There is sort of unwritten rule. I mean, there's a sort of latest rule that somebody said that you had to pay when you exit. My view is always have a word with your landlord and see where they stand, because you want to get your deposit back.
Absolutely.
And you can then take a view on what you're going to do. But in terms of painting, you don't have to paint the outside. Painting the inside, I mean, there's always going to be a bit of wear and tear, but some landlords...
8-9 years as well.
Yeah, some landlords are pretty strict. So if you've met them before, then you know where you stand.
Okay, have a chat, Trent, and all the best with the move. Let's talk moving. There's not much around on the rental front right now. Which are some of the areas where you still think there's a bit of inventory and perhaps, dare I say it, some value to be had? Oh no, he's making a face.
I'm not sure there's much value at the moment. I mean, this is such a great moment for Dubai as a town. You've got so many people coming here, being caused. Also, no one's leaving, because if you look at our home countries,
it's not that appealing right now.
It's not very appealing, is it?
My parents have stopped asking.
It's a bit of a muddle, but that's only for England. But I'm sure other countries are equally unappealing at this present time. So that's really usually every summer, and we've been having huge amounts of farewell parties. But the last 2 and 3 years, I don't think there've been any, and so demand is just extraordinary at the moment. Places of value, I mean, obviously there's a bit of value the further out you go. Always the central bits are more popular. I mean, there's still a bit of value in Damac Hills too in places, but you're living a different life than, say, you were living in Satwar or...
Well, it depends on your priorities, doesn't it? This is the thing. You make your choices depending on your budget, your lifestyle, how much you want to be here, where you're living. There's so many different factors. A message has come in saying, I've heard there might be a slump later in the year. Has Harry heard this? And is it better to wait to move? Time to get the crystal ball out, Harry Tregonning. What say you?
I've never predicted, but I don't think it's going to slump at all. I think demand's going to continue. I don't think many people will leave in the summer, and are already getting huge amounts of people making inquiries about coming in the summer. So I can't see a big change happening.
Here's a question for you. If your best mate was moving to Dubai, let's say next month, what advice would you give them about the logistical side of moving to Dubai, but also where they should be looking and some of the processes that people new to Dubai need to be aware of?
Well, if you're moving to Dubai, the first thing you need to do is get on to your HR department and the PROs and make sure that they start processing all your paperwork as quickly as possible. Because as we all know, once you get the Emirates ID, that's the golden ticket to unlock your life. You can open a bank account, you can rent a house. So you ought to be taking temporary accommodation while you go through this process. But temporary accommodation is also quite a useful time for you just to suss out the place. If you're looking at the portals from abroad, you don't really know where these places are.
Well, that's the thing. It's all a bit abstract, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, you can read as many guides as you want to areas.
You can ask as many women on various Facebook groups.
And I think
I all just endorse their own areas that they've
Absolutely.
chosen.
But I mean, one thing that people do is quite often they'll look and they're looking for the cheaper villas, and they'll look at somewhere like Murdiff, and then they arrive here and they realise that Murdiff's no good for their school at Dubai British School, and so they then have to work around that, or their job is a long way away from town square. But they're great communities, all these places, and as we've always said, there's no SW1 in Dubai, so you need to live where it works for you, really.
A message here, no name, when they're saying, hi guys, we're due to move into a brand new villa next week, and we've requested some snagging jobs be done. Smoke alarms fitted, intercoms and broken paving slabs repaired. Nothing's been done yet. I've got a sinking feeling that now the landlord has our money, they're never going to be done. Are we protected at all? I've got agreement on WhatsApp, but nothing's been amended in the contract.
Time to get onto your agent. That's what you really need to do. You lean on your agent. If you paid him, you need to get on him, and if not, tell him you do his work and earn his money. That he's hopefully brokered this deal for you to move in there. Now, if it's a brand new villa, you also have a bit more comeback because there's a year's guarantee of snagging from the developer. So you can also point this out to your landlord, so that when you move in, you're not asking for him to do stuff straight away if you feel that he's being reluctant. But most times when you move into a property, your agent should have supervised most of the work to be done. The
thing that caught my eye here was smoke alarms fitted. I don't think we have smoke alarms in our villa. I'm just thinking
it's time to get them fitted. I mean,
they
save lives.
Is this something that my landlord should have done, or is the onus very much on the tenant?
Well, your landlord, when you moved in, there were certainly no regulations then. Newer properties seem to be putting them in more and more.
Okay, all right.
I think probably new builds have that regulation.
I need to speak to Tregonning Maintenance, get you guys over. get on Amazon, buy some smoke alarms. Harry, we're run out of time. We've run out of questions, so it's clearly a lot of people with a lot of thoughts about property right now. What's the best way of getting in touch with you, picking your brains, and obviously availing some of the services over there?
Well, if you look on our website, it's tregonning.property or tregoningmaintenance.com. And we have Instagram pages as well, and get in touch. And a lot of people seem to be spending money on their houses and upgrading them rather than moving at the moment.
There's nowhere to move
There's nowhere to move. Having a new bathroom, a new kitchen or whatever. And we seem to be we're very busy doing that. So we'd love to do a bit more.
There you go. If you want Harry's details, drop me a little message saying property and I will hook you up. And thank you for downloading this episode of the Afternoons with Helen Farmer podcast. Don't forget, you can subscribe. You'll get it direct to your phone as soon as it's out. And you can listen to me live on Dubai Eye 103.8, Monday to Friday between 2 and 5 p.m.
You've been listening to a Dubai Eye 103.8 podcast. To enjoy lots more from Dubai Eye in the United Arab Emirates, just go to DubaiEye1038.com or find them wherever you normally get your podcasts.